So, Harry, I wanted to. I think we might have touched on this before in a previous Who episode, but I guess might as well be able to ask you again for a full on discussion point here. What do you, in your opinion, where would you say Doctor Who went wrong? And I understand
Oof.
that is probably a big loaded question to ask off the bat,
Yeah, I was going to say that's a big question.
but you can't
Um,
deny, and the audience can't
yeah,
deny, that Doctor Who has taken a turn, not for the best, in recent years, and there's going to be varying ideas or points that people can say, oh, it went wrong here, it went wrong here, or it went wrong because of this, behind the scenes wise or story wise. But just talking about it story wise, in your opinion, where would you say the show took a turn that has not helped the show going forward?
story wise is difficult for me because there's lots of different points that people have like when they say where did Doctor Who go wrong? Because yeah, like you said, it depends on what the context is. Like some people think it went wrong after season 5, like after Matt Smith's first season. That's when people are like, oh, it got worse from then, and it just kept getting worse and worse. But like, what do you mean by worse? Because is it like it's mostly just the story because you can never say the performances and the special effects got worse, especially Matt Smith and Capaldi. Um, but for me, because I've always loved every single episode Matt Smith's done, I loved Peter Capaldi is my favorite Doctor, and I love all of his series, and especially his last season, season 10, was my favorite of his. Um, my honest opinion is Doctor Who started getting bad in when Jodie was cast. Not when Jodie was cast. That's a that people might take that in the wrong way. When Chibnall was cast, or hired, should I say, as the showrunner, because Jodie could have been great. It's just for whatever reason she wasn't. But I think it's all down to Chibnall because it's very very obvious that not many people enjoyed his run, and if they did, they know it's not as good as it has been, and it is because of how he writes and who he hires and some of the actors and some of the like directors and other writers. Um, but yeah, my humble opinion is when Chibnall was introduced to showrun was when Doctor Who went wrong.
Yeah, you do make a good strong point there, and you can't deny we can't deny that regardless of what ended up happening before Chibnall was great or was different, there's no denying that he still could have fucked it up with how things went with and what was demonstrated with his era.
Hmm.
For me personally, I actually think, and this will probably be a shocker to no one if they've been watching our Who episodes regularly or in order. I strongly believe that Who lost its sense of direction during season 9, and that was
Yeah.
purely because of the Gallifrey arc being poorly undercut. Because for context and my view of it, the 50th set up the Doctor's search for Gallifrey as a long term arc or a long term direction for the show to go forward with. Because before that, it had always been, the last survivor of the Time War, and stories were inspired from that event that of how the show would go forward. Like the Doctor would meet new races that were consequences of the war or sufferers of the war, and they would seek revenge or other purposes that ended up getting the Doctor involved, like the fish people from the Venice episode. And or no, well they were. I think they were actually dealing with the cracking time, not the war. But there were other examples of alien races who were affected by the Time War, and that led into the episodes where the Doctor meets them. So in that sense, the Time War did have a knock-on effect that propelled storylines going forward for Doctor Who, and that was like the thing for the Tennant era, the Smith era, and the Eccleston era. But after the 50th, we could have got a very similar thing where subsequent seasons for years to come could have had the purpose would have been the Doctor, of course, finding Gallifrey, but it would have opened the door for so many other storylines where, okay, are you directly searching for it, or do you find people who are outcasts of Gallifrey who don't want it to be found again, or people who are seeking to destroy it again, like the Daleks were. We've talked about this somewhat before, and there's so many ways it could have gone. But what happened with Series 9 is, again, people should know this if they don't, for the shortened version, essentially it was wrapped up very quickly in the final episode of Series 9, and it wasn't even the center focus of the episode. It was literally wrapped up and undercut, because the writer and showrunner, our lad, Stephen Moffat, turned the focus completely back on the companion, Clara Oswald, who was killed in 2 episodes prior. But in said episode, he brought her back, and the rest of the episode was just the Doctor trying to save Clara, and everything to do with Gallifrey was just like, oh, it's back now. It's not important now. He's left, and it was just like,
Yeah.
it's bad enough that you do that to a story, to a setting and a storyline and a location that people have been wanting to see or eager to see since it was revived in 2005, and we were told straight out, oh, we're never going to see it. It's gone now. But to also have it be done by the same guy who said in 2013, oh, it's not gone, it's still there, and that's where the Doctor's going to go one day. He will get there one day. Oh no, you shouldn't have believed that. He got there, and he did nothing good or fun happened with that. It was just there, and then it was gone.
It's a little bit of a piss take that he did. That he did was like, he was like, yeah, the big event of the 50th, Gallifrey is still out somewhere. You're gonna find it, and then it was like 2 seasons later where it was found, but there was no build up to it. It was just the one episode. Might I add, excellent episode of Hellbent? Heaven Sent, which was the first one.
Heaven Sent came first, Hellbent followed.
Heaven Sent. Heaven Sent was the way that Gallifrey was found, in a sense, right? Because it was in the dial thing, the Dial of Destiny. No, what was it called? The Moment? No.
The Confession Dial.
Yeah, that one. That's where Gallifrey was for some reason, and the Doctor had to go through the whole thing and live millions of years to find it, and then it was found. That was a great episode, but I think Moffat was like, this is how Gallifrey came back. You're going to get one good episode, really good episode, and then it's back, and then you get the one after where it's like, yep, they're on Gallifrey now. But yeah, it could have been so much more than it was.
Yeah, I believe we mentioned this before, but in case we've all forgotten, for context, I do believe the reason why it ended up that way was because Moffat had originally planned to leave at the end of Series 9, but he was struggling to find a showrunner who would take over, which is why when they did find someone, and that showrunner, being Chris Chibnall, said, I'll do it, but I won't do it next season. I want to finish my other stuff. And so that's why Moffat stayed for Series 10. And there's a whole talk about how there was a whole talk we could have about how, Series 10, it feels like a very standalone show. It literally opens with an episode called The Pilot. It was very much a Passover season, in my opinion. So with Series 9, if Moffat had it his way, he would have left at Series 9. And if that is like the 100% genuine case, because again, I can't off the top of my head think if that is confirmed or if that's just like the under the saying among the fandom or whatever. The point is, if that was the case, it sort of makes a bit more sense now why he chose to wrap it up, because being selfish or not, it could kind of make sense that you would, if you were the guy who did all these big things that was connected to Gallifrey, with it being reintroduced essentially in the 50th, or like setting up its return, kind of makes sense you'd want to be the guy to also resolve that plot line. Doesn't change the fact that he did it so poorly, deciding to implement it with his Clara storyline.
Yeah, he started, so he wanted to finish it. I completely understand that. It's just, he says, if that is what the case was, why didn't you start resolving it right at the beginning of season 8? Like, that should be when it started to be resolved, and then like it builds up for 2 seasons, and then that would have been fine. If it was 2 seasons worth of build up to get Gallifrey back, that seems like an adamant amount of time. Like, not we probably wanted to go on a bit longer than that, but that seems like a good amount of time for it to be resolved. But yeah, to have it like, and as well about the Clara thing, like a lot of people didn't like Clara, and that is probably another part of where people thought Doctor Who was going wrong, was that such a big emphasis was put on Clara rather than her just being like the normal companion dynamic. Um, and like I think if the end of season 9 was like just about Clara and not about Gallifrey, then it probably would have been much better, better received, because like it's not as if either story is going to clash over the other. If it was just two separate things, I think it would have been like people would have probably liked it,
Yeah.
as opposed to being like, no, shite. This is all shite.
Yeah, I believe that people would have still been frustrated with the resolution of Clara. If she stayed dead, then I think people would still have
Yeah.
complaints to be made, but they would say, "Oh, at least it ended in a very unique and cool way, and that's memorable for the character." Because I still think that the whole thing about Clara being so influential in the Doctor's life is such a bad move. If it was done only once, like her saving him, like timeline thing wise, it's still a big thing. But I think it could be like looked upon. It could be somewhat accepted.
Mm.
And if they actually explored the consequences of that, where you lived multiple lives, you sure some of those memories won't resurface and cause you a lot of damage?
Yeah.
They never did any of that, and they give
That would have been
they,
so good if they'd have done that
yeah, and they give
after
give
after
her more
Smith.
big stuff to do. Like she's the reason why the Doctor was scared under the bed when he was little, and then she inspires him
Yeah.
to not be afraid of the dark and influence him in like being okay to be afraid. Again, in isolation, these are cool and wonderful moments, but again, it's all been shoved onto this one companion, and it's too much. It feels like it's too many
Mm.
big things, and it just makes Clara way too important in the grand story.
I just realised that exact plot point disproves the childless time, the timeless child, doesn't it? Because she goes back to Hartnell when he was a child, right?
Yeah, yeah, kind
And
of. I
then
mean,
how could he be a child and then be for so long?
I know. I'm sure there's some timey-wimey explanation because I mean, if if based off what we just see in the TV show alone, some Time Lords can, I guess, age slower. And I mean, and this is just basing this off the what I'm thinking right now, but we never got an explanation for Mel from Amy and Rory with River. She's a little
Oh
girl
yeah.
in the Impossible Astronaut two-parter. She regenerates at the end of that, and then when we next see her, she's a little girl in Ledworth, and she's still little. It's
Mm.
like for 50, 60 years, or like 30 years passed between 1960
Yeah.
something and whenever that was set when Amy and Roy were kids. How are you still
Oh
a little
yeah.
girl?
I never even thought about that.
So
Yeah.
it's possible that the Doctor can be a kid for a
I
long
guess that's
time,
Doctor Who,
but I'm
isn't
not
it?
denying that. Yeah, that's still. I'm not defending the timeless child, not at all.
No. Yeah, I was just saying, well, stop it, man. What are you
Yeah,
doing?
uh,
Uh,
yeah. The Clara stuff aside, I think the biggest curve and the biggest problem with that the show took was Series 9 is because after Gallifrey, what's the show been able to do?
not the biggest problem.
Series, as I said,
Not the biggest problem, I'd say.
sorry.
I'd say season 9 probably wasn't the biggest problem. That comes a bit later, but it was the start.
Well,
I
yeah,
think.
I would say it's the start, but it's still a big. I'd say it's the turning point because when you look at the grand story,
Yeah.
Series 10, as okay as it is, it's very much a standalone season. There's nothing. It only continues a few minor storylines set up in the Capaldi era. It's not got a big arching narrative that concludes everything and such. And then once we get to the Triple era, that's like full on disaster mode. Yeah, and since then, again, we have no idea at the moment what's going to happen with Doctor Who going forward, either in the 60th, or Series 14 and beyond. But yeah, it's just like since then, there's been no overarching big direction the show could go in, and I think not having that has hurt the show.
Yeah, man.
Cool. Okay. So, mate, would you like to add any more regarding the Chibnall era?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about where Doctor Who went wrong, I think it's a pretty obvious place or obvious things to talk about. Like I mentioned before, like just the whole of the Chibnall era, it is a bit of a disaster, isn't it? Like you said, it's just a whole mess of like poor decisions all around. I think, like with writing and acting and character development. Well, by that, character development is a bit of a stretch. I don't think there's any character development in the whole of Chibnall era, but it's the only era of Doctor Who I've stopped watching. Like, I could get through the bad episodes of Capaldi, because Capaldi was such a good Doctor, but I couldn't do that with the Chibnall era because I just didn't like Jodie as the Doctor, which is a real shame because I think she probably could have done better because she is a good actor. She's done loads of other stuff before this, like that, and I was so excited when she was cast. It's just I couldn't like take her seriously, or I've heard a lot of people say it's like she feels like a parody of the Doctor, and it's like that's what I thought. It's like I just couldn't watch it for her. So what was the point of watching it at all? So I just stopped. But you get to the Timeless Child, man, and it's like, oh, no one wanted this, everyone hates it, and then like they kept it going. Like I think if Chibnall had like from after Timeless Child into Flux, if he'd have been like, this is all a deception from the Master, or the Master's the Timeless Child, or someone else is the Timeless Child, and this is all like a big ruse, and an obvious way to do it is just the Master was lying because that's what the Master does. Then I think we could have been like, okay, we could have resolved it, and it would have been. We might have even like praised Chibnall, be like, okay, cool, you got us in the first half. But like, nah, you just went with it, and then made Flux, which was like still a mess of. Another mess of random stuff, with one good episode with the Sontarans, which was nice, but then the rest was just awful. And then the last episode the last couple of episodes with the Sea Devils, and then the very last episode.
Yeah.
I mean, you've probably got a lot of thoughts about Chibnall, so like what to like sort of keep it to what we think went wrong. What do you think went wrong with the Chibnall era?
Oh, so many wrong. I mean, the main thing, of course, the Doctor. I feel like Jodie was poorly handled with the writing, because I do agree that she. Again, this has been our talking points for multiple episodes, but I still think she could have been amazing. But half the time, the writers struggled to really settle down with what they wanted her Doctor to be like. A lot of the time, in terms of a presence, she was never able to grasp a lot of the notable elements of the Doctor when she needed
wasn't
to
commanding,
be serious, when she needed to be commanding,
authoritative.
Yeah, it's just she came across as way too. I get that they probably wanted to go for a bit more of a your best mate, very 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 overly friendly, very talkative approach maybe, and that can work because Matt Smith was very much a young man trapped in an ancient body, and he exuded the kind of youthful energy that kids love and that people like us can appreciate even in our older years. But Jodie did it in all the wrong ways, primarily because of the writing and how she was handled.
There was just no nuance. Like you're saying with Matt Smith, he was very funny and silly, but he had so much more nuance that like he could be serious and he could be angry and sad and not just be silly all the time. Whereas Jodie's like, she was either just silly or not silly, but she was just like jovial and hyperactive, or like just having a speech, just doing it, like performing a really patronizing speech. There was the two moods, and it was no nuance. And like you said, they didn't like land on what her character should be. Like when I was looking back in some notes I had from when I first watched her first episode, and I was like, this Doctor seems good. I just need to see what how they actually form her Doctor, because like I can see her like coming into her own. But then like the whole time she was the Doctor, she was trying to look for how she was. Like the whole first season was her trying to find who she was, and it's like, no, that should happen in episode 2 or episode 1. And it just never happened. You never sort of felt who she was as a Doctor, other than like some parodies of other Doctors.
Yeah, which is ironic, but considering during this era, Shivna made the conscious decision to focus on her a lot, making her POV character, and that has a counter problem because that neglected focus on the companions,
Mm,
and shock of all horror,
yeah.
when you've got three companions to focus on and you're not focusing on them, you're left with a lot of cast members with no story to really latch onto with the audience, or not enough story that's investing. Because again, the whole of the Whittaker era, the only notable companion that I still think holds the candle is Graham.
I think a similar thing, but I think Dan, like I quite like Dan in Flux, but Dan and Graham are basically the same character because they had the thing at the end where they met and they were like, oh yeah, we're best friends because they are the same. So yeah, I agree with Graham, but for me it was Dan more so.
Yeah, I feel like even with those few positives, I think overall the companion storylines too were just poorly handled, because you had Yaz who was just there for three full seasons, and only a few, at most maybe one or two episodes that tried to give her some development.
Mm.
But again, when you've got 30 plus episodes in your under your roster, and it's only two of them really give you the center focus to make something out of your character, that's a big problem there.
Yeah,
Ryan, he's
she's like the
just
longest serving companion, isn't she? Is that
yeah,
she?
I
Well, it's
believe so.
definitely
Yeah,
of New Who. She was in the whole run of the Doctor, and that's 3 seasons, and she didn't get much to do, and it was a shame because she could have probably done like been a cool character, but nothing ever happened with her.
yeah. Also taking the fact that she's meant to be a police officer, and
Mm. There was also like a couple of moments with different characters where they were like, "Wow, Yaz is the best, isn't she? So amazing." And you're like, "Why are you saying that? What has she done?"
yeah, what has she done to earn our appreciation as a character, as a cast member on this show?
Yeah,
uh, and
it's just you feel sorry for the actors because like I'm sure if the writing was good, they could give us some really cool characters that we'd actually like, but we don't really like the main companions really. And like I think with Dan and Graham is you watch them because you know who plays them. Like it's um Bradley Walsh and the guy from Liverpool
um,
who played Dan.
I can't remember.
Oh, it'll come to me, but I know. But like they're both like characters in real life, so like they're when you see them, they're like personalities, and you watch. I was interesting because I know them as like people and comedians, and it's really cool to see them in Doctor Who. So you like them for that, but for characters, like if it was just based on that and they weren't, um, if they were cast by like no names like how Yaz and Ryan were, you wouldn't like them as much. I think.
Yeah, I feel like with Graham, I think I appreciate his character more because he had a bit of an arc in series 11 with him dealing with the death of his wife and trying to bond with Ryan, and then after that
Mm.
he's just there. But they do give him that one
Yeah.
storyline about his fear of cancer coming back, which again endears us more to him and makes
Mm.
us hate the Doctor more when she has that stupid reaction
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and then he leaves at the end of that season. So
John Bishop. That's it. John Bishop.
John
That's
Bishop,
Dan.
yeah. Yeah, and with John Bishop's Dan Lewis, he again he's only got in a few episodes. He doesn't really have the most standout of a character, but what we do see of him, he's very likable, he's very kind, and he's just trying to go on a date meet with someone he likes. Again, that's very
Yeah.
relatable qualities, and he comes across as very nice. So you can see him becoming companion material. And then when you team him up with a character who we're meant to like and be invested in for like multiple seasons, in with Yaz, it really is contrasting. Where in Siri Influx, you see that there's that, I think we mentioned this in our review of that season, but there's that one episode where we see a few snippets of Dan's life or his flashbacks or something with him and the girl he likes, and you really grow to like him in those moments. And then you juxtaposition that with scenes with Yaz in a police car talking with one of her police officers or friends. We don't know because they never explain it, and we're like, they're not even giving us a character moment here. She's just talking. The character is talking, and Yaz is just looking around, reacting. She's not. they're not giving us anything with this character, and then it really cuts to the next bit with Jodie coming in, and it's like, if you're gonna have these moments with this character, make it
Yeah.
mean something. Why is this situation happening with Yaz? Why is the police element factoring into it and such? I mean, I know it was part of this big
Yeah.
thing with time and such with the flux, whatever. The point is, it was pointless, and then you juxtaposition that with Dancy, where you get to see a bit of his character and why he's the way he does things and such. I mean, yeah, we could go on, but it really shows that the Whittaker era was troubled by its handling of the characters and with the Doctor especially.
Yeah.
And in conclusion, I do have to add, yes, of course, we could not forget that the timeless fucking child.
Oh, I forgot for a second. Oh, great. Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, I mean,
Completely unnecessary.
such an unnecessary retcon. And again, a part of me is, again, we've said this to death so many episodes, and it's just, I'm just tired of it at this point. I'm like, I genuinely want to have a talk with Chris Chibnall and just ask him, why did you do this? Why
Why?
did you
Yeah.
think this big retcon of a change to 50 plus years of history? Why do you think this would be a good idea?
What does it add? What does it add to the character? What does it add to the story? What is the point of it? Why was but also why was nothing done with it after it was done? It was just sort of said as a thing, and then the Doctor was like, "I've got to deal with that," and then she does, and it's like, what? Come on, at least make it mean something. If it was a thing, but it didn't mean anything because it wasn't. Oh, yeah, like you said, we've said this a million times.
Honestly, it could go either way. It might people could. I mean, I'm sure there will be fan theories and forums discussing the reason why it never was continued directly. Maybe people will say, "Oh, because of the events of 2020, they had to shorten the season," which they did have to, and so they wasn't able to commit to other stuff and the storyline. Alternatively, I believe there is a definite reason to believe that he probably just thought, I'm not going to continue it in a big way, so that way it can be left up to interpretation, so he doesn't have to put the effort in into explaining more.
Mm,
Because Doctor Who has done that before with certain storylines and such, especially when was tied to the Doctor, and even now, we're still discussing today whether or not, at least in like the expanded media and such, whether or not the Doctor was going to be like the other from the Cartmel Master Plan, and we know that's not true to canon of the TV show now, but that was for a time the canon of the expanded media and such. I still don't. I'm still glad they never made that official. Same thing for the Timeless Child. I feel like it's so completely unnecessary to change the Doctor's origin this in such a big way. So it's kind of a blessing in a way that it ended up the way it did, where we didn't they didn't explore it deeper. So in a way, it is believable that it can be retconned out going forward. And
yeah,
I
I
hope
mean, I reckon it probably won't ever be addressed again, and then you'll just forget about it. Similar to how other things in Doctor Who have been said, but then you don't just forget about it, and then it just changes as it goes. As the future of the show progresses. Like, for instance, the one that comes to mind is apparently the Doctor is half human, according to the episode with the one episode with Paul McGann.
yeah,
But that was just never thought of again. And now it doesn't. Now it's not a thing. Like, the Doctor isn't half human, so I reckon it'll just be a similar thing where it's like, this was that stupid movie, but that stupid retcon, and then we'll just forget about it, and then eventually the Doctor will be 1,000 years old, and the first Doctor would have been Hartnell.
yeah. I mean, I can definitely see that being the case, but considering it's routine, but the fact that they have done that before. Alternatively, I do feel like
And also with the fourth Doctor, because there was that. I think, I don't know if this is the Master thing you're talking about, but when all the other faces of the Doctor show up, when it's like these are all the past incarnations of the Doctor as well.
yeah,
That was just never mentioned again.
that is the episode that influenced Chibnall to, I believe, to make the Timeless Child plotline. That was the basis of where he where what inspired him to make those parts of that story arc canon. I I mean
Brilliant.
I was aware of that before Timeless Child, and I was
Yeah,
part of the fandom that agreed that that was just meant to be the previous incarnations of Morbius. 'Cause
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
but now they're not. Goddamn Chibnall.
Yeah, I mean, but even if they were supposed to be the Doctor, people just forgot about it. You know,
Yeah,
at least like you said, you people like you thought you changed it so it wasn't the Doctor. So I think it would just be a similar sort of thing where we just will forget about it unless Chip RTD like um you know retcons the retcon, which would be funny.
I hope
Or
so.
like maybe he just sort of has a really quick mention of it where it's like a joke where it's like, yeah, don't remind me. Like, I reckon other than that, if that doesn't happen, we'll just forget about it and it will just cease existing.
Maybe. I guess it really depends what ends up happening with the show going forward, and if they can make better storylines that will enable us to feel like, okay, I hate what you did before, what happened before, but at least the stuff here we're getting now is good, so we can accept and we be comfortable saying, okay, that happened, but you're doing better now, and you're openly going to not going to acknowledge those failings. So if that happens, maybe we will be able to look past that going forward. More likely we will. But again, there's always going to be a part of me that will always say, I hope they can. If the opportunity comes, I hope they retcon it because it's such a big storyline.
Mm,
Again, because you mentioned it before, going back to the Doctor is half human thing, that happened, but that was only in one TV movie, and in juxtaposition, the Timeless Child is a thing that spanned an entire era of a Doctor. That's a
yeah.
lot more difficult to ignore than just one TV movie.
Mm,
So yeah, I feel like this is one of those few storylines that I think would require to be retconned so that it can be a bit more. I think the main thing is just about because the plots and the arcs before when it came to the Doctor's past and such, there was no reason to change it. I mean, other than the fact that if we go into real life agendas and politics and such, it was that reason that why they did it. But we're not going to get into that. I From a story narrative, it just makes it's so unnecessary. And I just hope we can get back to the you're not this, you're not that, you're not the chosen one. You are just a normal Time Lord who wanted to see the universe, and you've become an amazing figure, a person of the people, a good person who helps people when they need you, because you were just kind. That's what I want to get
yeah.
back to.
You're not Jesus.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In an overall state, yeah, that is where I feel like Doctor Who definitely had a big dip. But I would also put my foot down in saying that in terms of a turning point, Series 9 is in my opinion where the show lost its footing because I think it had the door to the Gallifrey, the search for Gallifrey. If that had still been left ongoing,
Mm,
it's entirely possible Chibnall could have gone with that and made a better story out of
yeah.
that. Maybe even made the
Well,
Timeless Child a bit more palatable.
yeah. But yeah, like you said before, that the Gallifrey returning um like plot line opened up so much like potential, but they never went with the potential. Um, so what do you think they could have done instead?
Okay, so yeah, so we're dipping into our own concepts here now. More specifically, I've got a pitch here for what I could.
Your pitch, it's not mine. I'm just here for the ride.
Yeah, you're just here for the ride. Although, again, if you think of any concepts, by all means, let me know and we'll
Oh
hear
yeah,
yours.
I'll shout it out.
But yeah, I've got picture this right now. Let's put logic out the window at the moment and pretend that I am a very successful showrunner with years of experience under my belt, and I've just been handed the keys to Doctor Who.
Okay,
More specifically, it's 2013.
okay.
Series 7 and the 50th have just happened. And that's it. We've had the 60th, the 50th, sorry, and Moffat has left after that. That was his big hurrah. And I am now the showrunner of Series 8 and beyond. Now, this is what I would have done with my pitch. For my new start to the era with Series 8. It's not a new Doctor, it's Matt Smith still. He stays on for one more season. And what I would have done with this is that
Did,
I actually would have.
did he actually want to stay on in reality, or did he choose to go?
I believe he made it open that he was going to be. He was leaving after roughly after the 50th, because he originally did announce that he was going to be back for Series 8, but a few months after, well, before they confirmed like filming for the 50th, he then made it clear that he would be leaving at the end of 2013. So
Okay, so in this alternate reality, he does
yeah,
stay on.
because I do believe Moffat did intend to do more with Trenzalore with that arc, but then he found out Smith was made it known he wanted to leave, so he decided to wrap it all up in his last episode. And
Wow, he's got a what's the term? A track record of wrapping things up too quickly.
oh yeah, but yeah, in this alternative reality, I was approached as the new showrunner, and I told Smith quite early on, I've got this big storyline planned for you, and it's going to be your last if you want to. Would you like to do it? And he'd go, hell yeah, let's go out with a bang. So what I would have done, Series 8, it's essentially what we got with the Time of the Doctor, but prolonged. So the first episode, it's them arriving at Trenzalore, and it will basically be I imagine this probably could be similar to Flux in a sense that it would probably be a shortened season, which would be a change, but I think would be all right. I think like you could do like a 6 to 8 episode season, or maybe even only 10 episodes. But the point is, it's a season that's primarily set on Trenzalore. Each episode would be about the Doctor protecting the planet from a variety of aliens. Some would be from Classic Who, considering this would be like post the 50th. It was sort of still in a bit of a celebration mood. So we would have some classic monsters we haven't seen in a long time. We would have, some new ones, some new ones from the new era, and we'd have some completely original ones. And then that would be the season that ends with Smith. Same thing. The Time Lords come through to him in the end. Clara likely helps him, and in the end, he gets a new regeneration cycle, and he becomes Capaldi.
Lovely. I mean, I would love to see more Smith. And like, if it was like I think that would be a really good idea if it was like a 50th season in a way, where it's like after the 50th, the next season is just sort of like, yeah, like a continuation of like the celebration of Doctor Who, and like new and old. I think obviously, I think anyone would love to see that.
Yeah, it, yeah. It's sort of similar to that. It sort of reminds me of back when before Series 9 was airing, there was a point where we all believed that they were going to do a special episode to commend the 10-year anniversary of Revival Doctor Who.
Yeah, I remember.
And a lot of people were convinced that the fact that her mother died on the day Doctor Who aired, and in universe that's the same day that the Autons attacked. People thought for sure we were going to get an episode where it would be revealed that Clara's mother was killed by the Autons, and that would have some knock-on effect in the storylines with the Doctor and Clara going forward. But sadly, no. we just got that one special video of Peter Capaldi saying, "I remember watching Rose for the first time, and I loved it," which is nice, but not the same as an actual episode that dedicates to a little celebration of that achievement of being on the show for 10 years. But hey, and that happened. That's in the past now. So moving on with the pitch concept. We've had Series 8, that's Smith's last. Going into Series 9, this will be Capaldi's debut season. And I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't change too much of this from what we did get with Capaldi's original first debut, because I think the introduction of Missy, the Cybermen being like the end goal of the big antagonists essentially of the arc. Well, Missy is really, but in terms of muscle, it's the Cybermen. But I don't mind.
Can you make them not fly?
Sorry?
Can you make them not fly?
I
them
would
to
definitely
fly.
give them a redesign. They'd definitely be a lot more.
Yeah, not
Iron Man. And I feel like I definitely would be open to the idea of cutting some stuff like the Bloody Moon episode and except for that burst part.
The forest episode,
and the forest episode, of course. Yeah, Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like for the most part, I actually don't mind Series 8, primarily because I don't mind. I like that take on the 12th Doctor. His very more darker and very moody grandfather, but he still has a good heart. He's still a madman, and he still knows
Mm.
what needs to be done, and he does it by the good of the people. Yeah, I feel like Series 9, my version of Series 9 would just be a take on Series 8, but with some minor tweaks. But I would also like to emphasize that I would definitely highlight the Doctor is searching for Gallifrey more. So again, we talked about this in the previous video or future video, whatever, whenever it's out. But those all the times we see the Doctor writing on his chalkboard, I would make it very clear that, oh, I am doing calculations. I am trying to figure out where Gallifrey is. Maybe it's hogwash.
Yeah, yeah. There should be like it's like cold opens or cold closes. I don't know, just like little parts of the episode that may be different from the story. When he is like traveling specifically to look for Gallifrey, or he's talking to people, um, or like coming across clues. He needs to find clues. Um, Instead of it just being like him talking to himself, he should be actively doing stuff. But like maybe it's not solely the focus of episodes. Maybe 1 or 2 episodes. That would be a cool like little scattering of the Gallifrey arc. Like maybe instead of the Moon episode and the Forest episodes, we can get some alternative Gallifrey episodes, but like not set on Gallifrey, just like him looking for Gallifrey, but like more sort of expanded. But yeah, I still think there should be like in most episodes some sort of
Yeah,
thing that he
I think
does.
you just birthed this concept right now for me. How cool would it be if instead of the moon episode, the TARDIS lands on a Gallifreyan home base on a moon, a random moon in the galaxy, and the Doctor said, "Oh, this base used to be occupied by the Time Lords during the Time War," and they find out that it's being infested by the inhabitants of the planet, which are giant spiders. Because I hate spiders, so they can be a
Oh
cool
yeah,
scary
yeah,
villain for an episode. But the episode would be about the
yeah.
Doctor trying to rummage for any clues that could indicate, oh, maybe Gallifrey still has a connection to the planet on in the logs of this moon base, and that could help me lead us to it. And spoiler, they don't. But
Yeah,
again, moments,
exactly.
things like that almost like it's like continuing the Gallifrey the Time War thing, where oh, you see repercussions
I
still.
just thought. Sorry, go on. Yeah, I just thought of another possible episode, like full episode that it could be. So maybe an episode, I've always thought since before the 50th came out, when they announced that there was going to be paintings and like the paintings were going to be like a big part of the episode, I was like, oh, that could be a really cool horror episode where like some sort of horrifying painting comes to life, right? Maybe they could do a an episode, or they could you could do as showrunner an episode about the status cubes, but that's the whole point of the episode, is just him learning about them, and maybe he finds the villain of the episode are paintings, and he has to use the status cubes and find out how they work and find out where the dimensions are that the status cubes have, because that's how Gallifrey was saved, because he was put in a pocket dimension with the status cube. So maybe that could be a plot point.
Yeah, yeah, that would cool. It would be cool.
That literally just went into my mind. I was like, oh yeah, they never talked about that again. The
Nah,
cubes.
it didn't. But yeah, that's my take on Series 9. And moving on now to Series 10. And this story would be completely different. So, with my take here,
But season 10 is my favorite season.
yeah, well,
Oh, I guess that would be. So is there no more Bill Potts?
sorry, mate, but tough love. Bill Potts, Nardole, nothing,
Oh,
none of that happens in my
what?
storyline.
What? No Nardle? Oh, mate, you've gotten rid of the best stuff from Capaldi.
Sorry,
That's his best season.
maybe so,
Damn
but
it.
that's in this.
Can she be a guest in one episode at least?
Sure, she can. She'll replace a
Thank.
shielder.
Oh, that's perfectly fine with me. That's great.
Yeah, give her a two-part episode where she helps them deal with insert monster of the week that I can't think of off the top of my head. But
Cool. That's fine. That's fine.
yeah. But point is, Series 10. My take on Series 10 is completely different, and you and the audience, if you've seen another certain episode, which I'll probably leave in the link of the description. If you've seen that episode, if you've seen that Grey Owl episode, you probably already know where this is going with this concept pitch here. But with this storyline, what I would do was that the Doctor, throughout the season, the Doctor and Clara find out that there's essentially. Let me just read it from it here. The Doctor faces off against an antagonist who is creating hybrid races using different species from different eras in time and space. We discover eventually that
Oh
this
dear.
person it's all been plotted out and set up by the Rani, a time lady who, during the Time War, was ordered by the Time Lords to aid them in the conflict by creating weapons that would allow them to endure against the Daleks. And shortly before Gallifrey's destruction, she fled using a stolen TARDIS and had taken some of her experiments with her. She is now eager to continue her research and eventually mold the perfect warrior race. And that is what she's doing. That is her. That she is the big bad of the season, and that is what the bulk of the season is about. It's basically the Doctor and Clara traveling around, and they end up running into these very unnatural creatures that shouldn't exist. All things considered, they shouldn't have never crossbred with this race or that. These are creatures that never existed based on the Doctor's own knowledge, and he's been everywhere twice. So he knows something's going on here. Someone's creating these unique races, and they're not kind. They're cruel creatures that are hurting people, the innocent. We need to find out why they're doing this. We need to find out who did this, and if possible, we have to stop them. So that's what the arc is. And at the end of the arc, it's revealed to be the Rani. And again, tying into the Gallifrey stuff, the consequences of that, and also the bleeding into the idea of, oh, it's still out there. We need to find out what's going on if this could be connected to that. And Rani is the villain. And yeah, this season,
This all seems very familiar.
yeah, yeah. Again, we talked about this before as a potential storyline pitch for a future Gallifrey arc. Yeah, I am basically just reusing that for this pitch here, because again, we are in an alternative universe right now, and I am the showrunner, so my choice.
Okay.
So, sort of basically a similar thing. The Rani is doing this because she is hell bent on discovering creating the perfect weapon, and because of this, her actions in creating these hybrids become the catalyst to Clara dying in this season. So Clara still dies, and because the Rani is the one who created the quantum shade, the being that ends up killing Clara.
Is that the crow?
Yeah,
Yeah. Or the raven, sorry.
yeah. So that just like in the episode, that breaks the Doctor, and he is then trapped by the Rani, who places him in a special Gallifreyan prison, which is very similar to the Confession Dial. This is essentially replacing it, but it's essentially a trap made by the Rani. And the Doctor, just like in Heaven Sent, so we still get that episode. Just like in Heaven Sent,
Cool.
he ends up getting out of it, and he seeks revenge. He's going to avenge his companion because he's, again, just like in the show at this point, because that's one thing I can't really undo because of series 7. But yeah, he really cared about Clara, especially considering all she did for him and the fact that she was killed by the Rani. Yeah, the Doctor's not going to take that lying down, so he's basically going on a bit of a revenge streak here. But this is where we get to a big twist with this season, and this is something that I haven't mentioned at all because it would be seeded throughout the season that someone is trying to find the Doctor and contact him, but they just miss him. And they maybe they have a vortex manipulator, or maybe they have some other.
Is it Donna?
Sorry,
It's Donna, isn't it? It's Donna.
no,
Because she kept missing the Doctor.
no, no. This person
Ah.
is searching for the Doctor throughout the season, but they just miss him. But she finally catches up with him in this last episode, and the Doctor is about to confront the Rani. He's about to give in and possibly kill her because he doesn't know what he's going to do when he's in this much of an angry mood. But he is stopped and saved by the arrival of his granddaughter Susan.
That is cool. um, yeah, I mean, what sort of Susan is it going to be? Is it like a new incarnation? Is it the same? Is it a younger version of the current one? You know
This
what I mean?
would be, in my opinion, again, we're definitely delving into alternative realities here. This would be the same actress who played her in the '60s, Carol Ann Ford, and I can't speak of her as an actor today because I haven't seen her in anything, so I don't know if she would be able to pull off
Does she
a
still
big
act?
acting role. I know she does a lot of voice work for Doctor Who, Big Finish,
Hmm.
but I have yet to see her in anything that could make me 100% say, oh, she could do a full season of Doctor Who, running around corridors and such. Again, because I think she's like 80 something now. But for the hypothetical story here, let's just say, just regardless of her age, she is still as spry as she was when she was young, and she's still able to act and do a big full season of Who. So in this case, she came back for this episode, and she is full of swing. She's here to be there for her grandfather, and what happens is that she convinces the Doctor, "Hey, I'm here for you. Don't do this because that's not what Clara would have wanted. That's not what you want, and you know what you need to do because you are a good man at the end of the day. And who better to tell you that than the person who your own fucking granddaughter, your family." So in the end, Susan is the one who convinces the Doctor not to kill the Rani, and they both imprison the Rani. They stop her experiments, so they ensure that the universe is protected and saved from any these confrontational monsters. And the Rani is imprisoned, and it's again, I don't know how the rights go with the Rani, if that character could be recurring or used again. But if not, then she came back for a season, but she's trapped now, and we'll probably either never see her again, or she could come back at a future point as a new antagonist. That leaves the door open.
You could imprison her in the same thing that she put the Doctor in.
Exactly, yeah, that would be perfect. So yeah, after defeating the Rani, Susan would then take the Doctor back to Earth, and there the TARDIS would land in America, and they'd go to a diner. They just have a bit of a catch up, and while Susan leaves to do something, the waiter comes up to the Doctor and she asks him if he needs anything to drink, and he says no, and he looks up at her, and it's Clara, and he realizes this is another variant of Clara, another of her splinters that was there when that was created when she was chucked into the Doctor's when she jumped into the Doctor's time stream. And the Doctor has a bit of a talk with her, and he basically confides that, listen, I lost someone recently, and it still hurts. I don't know how to react to that, and it's not helping that he's literally looking at the person, that exact same person, the spitting image of the person
Yeah.
he was friends with for so long. But this Clara, she is different because this Clara is more elderly. She's in her '70s, and she's clearly lived a life. He notes she's wearing a wedding ring. He knows that she mentioned that she has a grandkid, and he basically asks her about her life, and she basically says, "Oh, I lived such a lovely one. I met this lovely bloke. I married, had many kids. I went to so many cool places." And she basically gives him a rundown of her life, and the Doctor is just so happy to hear that. And Susan is in the corner. She's watching this happen, and she's smiling. And in the end, the elder Clara assures him that, look, your friend's gone. I understand that's heartbreaking, but know that she cared for you, and know that she wouldn't want you to be hung up on this because she wanted the best for you. And all you can do is just move forward and honor her the best way you know how. And in this moment, the Doctor, and I got it in my notes, so I don't know if I'm saying it in just I'm giving it justice by saying it or describing it, but essentially, this conversation with this elderly Clara basically saves the Doctor. It comforts him, that he allows him to have closure, and that basically solves. This essentially fulfills the goal of the variant. This Clara, it was her goal from the beginning because every variant had to save the Doctor in some form, sometimes literally, sometimes
Oh yeah.
figuratively. In this variant's case, it was her goal to live a full life. So when she meets the Doctor, she's able to convince him to keep going, to keep being the Doctor, because that's who you are. That's who Clara That's why Clara cared about you. That's why she admired you. That's why she was always there for you, and she knows you're doing good. So she wants you to keep. She would want you
That
to keep doing good.
that is such a cool way to end that. I like, literally when you said that about like the Clara was supposed to save the Doctor, but like figuratively, I was like, oh, that is such a cool way. Like in my brain, I can imagine that scene happening, and then like the 12th Doctor's theme playing, and like him like after the talk with her, like at the end of an episode when the Doctor like that theme starts playing, and like he puts on like a new costume, and he like gets the TARDIS in gear and stuff like that. I'm just imagining like that happening after the conversation. That's a really cool way of putting it.
Thank you, mate. So yeah. Also, after that little moment, the Doctor is able to accept what happened. He's able to move forward, and he leaves the diner with his granddaughter. They go into the TARDIS. Sort of a similar scene happens where they re-enter the ship. It all starts off. The Doctor gets a new screwdriver, and he looks at his
Very
granddaughter,
cool.
granddaughter, and they say, "Where to next?" And then the Doctor goes, "Home." And the TARDIS takes off. End of the season, and yeah, that's my take on
Very
series
cool.
10. We've not only resolved the Clara storyline, and I'd like to think in a more satisfying way, but we had a return.
And without Gallifrey being the overarch.
Yeah, Gallifrey is still the overarching narrative. We got the return of a classic villain who has connections to Gallifrey, and we got the reintroduction of Susan, which I think would be a nice change and also a great thing for fans in terms of fan service, but also in terms of a narrative satisfaction because again, we've been waiting for so long to see Susan again, and the thought of having her with Capaldi was the best. That's why I wanted that to happen for so long, and why it
Yeah.
was such a missed opportunity when Capaldi did leave, and we never got to see that. So, moving on now to Series 11. Now, Series 11 would basically almost be similar to my take on Series 9, where that was basically Series 8, but just with a few tweaks. With Series 11, this is basically similar to Series 10, where the bulk of the arc is the Doctor and Susan trying to rehabilitate Missy, but the backdrop is very much still they are searching for Gallifrey. So so yeah, it's them trying to rehabilitate Missy, but it's mainly about them also trying to still find Gallifrey. So it's kind of fitting how they're at the St. Luke's University, and Susan is posing as a teacher now. A nice juxtaposition to how when she was introduced in the classic series, she was one of the students of Cold Hill School. Well,
Oh
now she's
yeah.
working as a teacher,
Yeah.
and the Doctor is a lecturer, just like in the actual show. And yeah, that's them. That's their day job. And during that time, they're also trying to rehabilitate Missy. They're keeping an eye out for clues for Gallifrey, and they can still have an episode where they deal with the monks. But I would change it so that
Why can't Bill be in this season then if they're still at the university?
I don't know. I guess primarily because I wanted we've got Susan here. I would want to give the focus entirely to her as a companion because it would be one thing to introduce her. It would be another thing to introduce her, keep her around, but then just have her on the to the side. And I think a lot of people would be disappointed with that, myself included. So if we're going to do
Hmm.
and considering where we're going with her, which we will get to, I feel like it would be owed to her to have a full season dedicated to her as a companion.
Okay.
So yeah, so I still think we would have the monks trilogy episode. It's not the I don't think I wouldn't say it's my most favorite bunch of episodes, but I'm purely keeping it in here. I'm purely keeping it in here because it's got villains called the monks, and I would have this
Right.
3-part story be rewritten so that it includes the villain, the Time Lord villain, the meddling monk.
Yeah, boy. I've never seen anything that he's in, but he seems to be someone I'd like.
Yeah, he's primarily just the Time Lord who likes screwing around with history. He's like, I think one of his
Yeah.
actual quotes from his debut episode was, "Oh, just imagine what it would be like to watch Hamlet on television." Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the kind of Time Lord who would be okay to mess up a bit of history for fun, I guess. But yeah, I just envisioned that would be another cool way to reintroduce another Time Lord that's not the Master. We had the Rani in the previous season as a big bad, so for this season we have another Time Lord in just a guest role. He's like He's back. He's doing his own thing. He's very nonplussed about Gallifrey. He's just like, I'm just doing my thing, and the Doctor has to stop him
Mm.
because fuck, you're teaming up with a bunch of evil villains called the monks, and they're trying to take over humanity. We can't let that happen. And in the end, the monk just escapes. He's off in the universe. He does his own thing, and the Doctor will see him again one day, but again, he's not part of the bigger picture. And the only other thing I would add to this season is that there would be an episode dedicated to the Doctor and Susan reuniting with Ian Chesterton.
He was the was he one of the teachers?
Yeah, he was the original companion, one of the original companions of
Yeah,
Hartnell era. He was the first one of
yeah.
the first companions alongside Susan and Barbara, and he was actually featured in. He was part of the companion
The
group
yeah,
in the Power of the Doctor.
Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever it was. Yeah, in the last episode. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So we again we expected him in Series 8, but we didn't get him. We did get him surprisingly in Power of the Doctor, but it was just a cameo. In this alternative history, in this episode of Series 11, we got an entire episode dedicated to the return of William Russell as Ian Chesterton, and it's tears, it's emotional, it's heartfelt, it's tragic because again, for a bit of context, I envisioned that by this point, Barbara has passed away, so he's in his head he's the only one left. But he then reunites with the Doctor and Susan years later. They have an adventure together. Maybe they fight a classic villain, maybe they fight a new villain, or maybe it could be one of those rare episodes where nothing bad happens. It's literally just it probably could be like one of
yes.
the shortest episodes of Who,
I
being only like 30
I
to 40
need.
minutes.
I always say if I was in charge of Doctor Who, I'd make some episodes that didn't have a villain, that would just be good vibes the whole time. The whole time, no stakes, no tension, just like a good fun time.
Yeah, just make it a character episode where it's just the characters talking and
Yeah,
interacting. Because when it's good, that's what sells the episode. When it's bad, it's wasting
yeah,
time. In this case, yeah, it will basically be them reuniting, and we get to see where he is now, and it can end very feel good with the Doctor and Susan going off. They offer him the chance to travel, but he says, "Nah, my time's gone now. But that you've clearly got something you need to do, and I'm happy to see you've still got each other's backs. I'm still glad you're still together, and I'll be able to move forward with my life too, because I lived a quiet one indeed, and I owe it to you, Doctor Susan. Thank you." And yeah, that would be his highlight episode for his return, and then we go on, and we now enter the ending of Series 11. Now, I still think that the return of the Mondasian Cybermen would be all right. I think that
yeah.
Missy would definitely come back into play and she would be redeemed. I don't think again I debated back and forth on this, but for now I would say I think I would be okay with actually not seeing the return of John Sims as the Master.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like the focus should just be on Missy, the Doctor, and Susan, and they come into conflict with the Cybermen, and it's tied in with some of the plot line that could be that is resolving the return of Gallifrey. Maybe that they found a way at last to find the planet, but the Cybermen are also on track to somehow fighting this as well, and they've got to basically stop that because the last thing they need is the Cybermen getting to Gallifrey. And yeah, during the three
Mm.
part final, the Doctor and Susan and Missy they confront the Cybermen. Missy ends up sacrificing herself to save Susan from the Cybermen, and it appears that she dies. So sort of similar how in the actual show she's shot fatally, and we see her body fall. We assume she's dead,
Oh
but we
yeah.
know she will come back at some point. But in this episode, it's sort of a similar thing. She saves Susan's life in this situation, and she seemingly dies. But we know we'll see her again. With Susan, however, she gets shot. She gets shot by one of the Cybermen, and in this moment you think we're going to lose her. We think the Doctor is powerless to do anything, considering the Cybermen are approaching them. The Doctor's not got his screwdriver now because it was blown up by one of the Cybermen. Again, I'm sure this might make me confusing, but I just got it here in the notes that the sudden arrival of his other companions from Classic Who, from Gallifrey, who are tied to Gallifrey, they come in and essentially help the Doctor defeat the Cybermen. So we've got the return of Leela, we've got K9 Mark One, we've got
Give
Romana,
away.
and we've got again a lot of this stuff was mentioned in a previous video for context, but in short, every classic companion who was associated with Gallifrey, who stayed on the planet or was from Gallifrey, who was likely still on Gallifrey or should still be on Gallifrey from their time with the classic series, and likely when the Time War was going on, they would still be on Gallifrey when it was saved and sealed away. And in this episode, we're essentially heading to Gallifrey at this point. There's no way to avoid that. So in this case, they would come through on the other side, and they see what's happening. They see the Doctor's in peril, and they come in to save him. And again, sort of a role reversal of how the Doctor saved Gallifrey. Now it's the people of Gallifrey coming in to save the Doctor. So he and Susan are
Nice.
saved by his former companions and Time Lords. And yeah, they bring them to Gallifrey after beating the Cybermen, and there, under the support of the Gallifrey, under the support of the Time Lords, Susan is able to go through her official first regeneration process. Because again, this is still Carol Ann Ford, so by
Nice.
all things considered,
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because you said that you want Susan to have this whole series for her, but I wondered if you went for Susan or for the actress who played Susan. But I guess that for both.
yeah, that does answer it. Essentially, I would want to give the actor herself um, a chance to have a full season for
Yeah.
herself. Because considering how much of an important role she plays in the narrative of lore of Who, and yeah, I think she deserved a full season for herself. And then in the season final, she ends up regenerating, and because she's got her grandfather, she's got her home planet, all there to support her in this moment. And for her, again, I envision that this would be her first incarnation. So this is her first time she's ever regenerating, and it's terrifying for her. But she's home now. She's got her family. She's got the doctor by her side, and she's able to get through the regeneration process, and she regenerates. And after that,
Nice.
the last episode. I envision this to be part of like the last episode because it's a three-parter. But yeah, this last episode the rest of it would literally just be they're back on Gallifrey now. The Doctor finds out what's going on, and he's able to reunite with some of his past companions. He finds out what Leela's been up to, how she's married the man that she fell in love with when she left the Doctor on Gallifrey. K9's still her loyal companion. Romana, I imagine that because for more context here, she actually the actress herself, because she's a Time Lord, she had two incarnations played by two different actresses.
The actress is a Time Lord.
No. The character is a Time Lord, but
Wow.
the
Oh,
character was played by two different people, and they represent two
shame.
incarnations.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we only ever saw two incarnations on the show, but there is a third that was introduced in Big Finish, and I believe that actress is still voicing that character. So hypothetically, we could bring her in as the TV incarnation of Romana Free, which would be cool. Alternatively, if they want to stay away from that, whatever, just let Big Finish have their thing, they could just introduce Romana 4, and the fourth incarnation, and have it be played by a completely different actress.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. But yeah, I think it would be cool if it was the Big Finish one because I think it's always nice when Big Finish things get mentioned in the show or actors come in, um, or vice versa. But yeah, I think. But yeah, either way, or a new actor who's like got like sort of popular, um, would be cool.
Yeah. So yeah, so the point is, so Romana, it's okay.
Sorry.
So Romana, the Doctor reunites with Romana, and she is now the president of Gallifrey. And we find out that Rassilon, after Gallifrey was saved, Rassilon was exiled by the Time Lords by her because of what he tried to do and what he ended up doing with events that prolonged the war, but also events that caused the suffering of Gallifrey. Essentially, we find out that Rassilon has been exiled now, and she is now in charge. And all things considered, she is doing all right. There's still a lot to be done. They are still recovering, recuperating, and trying to fix things. But Gallifrey is on the mends for the most part, and in the Doctor's eyes, it couldn't be in safer hands, considering he knows who Romana is and he trusts her. And so he reunites with Romana, and she, being happy to see him and knowing how much he sacrificed for Gallifrey, for everyone really, she offers him the chance to stay on Gallifrey and become her successor as the next president. But the Doctor refuses because that's not what he wants. That's not where his heart is. His heart is out there in the stars, exploring, seeing what's out there for the universe. And she accepts that, and she encourages him that you are home now. We know you know where we are, we know where you are, and we know what you need to do. So go do what you need to do, Doctor, and go out there and save the universe because it still needs you. But know that we will always have your back. You will always be able to come home, and that's almost again. We'll get there, but it almost feels very final, and I think that would be quite fitting for a show, especially when at this point in real life, who had ran for 10 years by this point, or over 10 years. You're on season 11. That's a fine place to stop if you needed to. So yeah, back to the story. So he's back to Gallifrey. He's reunited with all of his classic companions. We know Gallifrey's stable now, and the Doctor is content to know he knows where it is. He knows he can come home if he wants to, but he knows what he needs to do, what he wants to do. So he prepares to leave, and he visits Susan, and he says, "Let's go, Susan. We've got plenty to see in the universe. Let's go out there. I'm sure you're very eager to see what's out there, especially because you've got a new lease of life in you now." And what does Susan do? She kindly refuses.
She dies. Oh, okay.
Jesus,
Sorry.
mate. So yeah, no. What happens is that Susan decides that I lived a full life on Earth. I loved David. I hated leaving you leaving me, but I was able to live a life, and I was able to do so much, and I had a family, and I loved them, but they're gone now. It's just me, and being with you these last few years has been so amazing. It's been great, but now I'm home, and I want to stay here. I want to stay where I belong, and I'm happy with that. And yeah, so if I'm not making sense, essentially, decides that she doesn't want to travel with the Doctor anymore because they are home now. She doesn't want to go for anymore, and yeah, the whole point of this is really because I wanted it to end on almost a final note, on a concluding note for Susan, where we've introduced her. She's had a full season of an adventure with the Doctor, but you can only do so much with a companion before they either have to die, they have to leave of their own accord, or they have to leave by force. And in Susan's case, if she ever was to leave after becoming a main companion, I would like to think that she would choose to settle down on Gallifrey. And considering she's got a new life for her with her second regeneration now, I can see her being one of the Time Lords that goes on to help Gallifrey flourish. She works alongside Romana to better Gallifrey, and whatever form that takes, that will be something to see for the future. But the point is, Susan is home now, and she wants to stay home, and that is something I think the Doctor would wholeheartedly respect. And as
And I think it's also probably appropriate for her to want to leave the Doctor rather than him leaving her, like what happened the first time.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, they have an emotional hug. They say goodbyes, but she encourages the Doctor, come back and visit sometime because you're always welcome. And the Doctor promises. He promises that he will come back, just like he. Well, no, not like he did come back because Susan found him in the end.
Yes, so not like he did before because he didn't. Yeah, no, but I was thinking that would be like a cool. I think we've said this before. I've said this before, but it would be nice if Gallifrey was like a recurring thing with recurring characters, and if you recast or this new regeneration of Susan is like a younger actress who can come back again and again and be like a recurring character. I think that would be like a fun thing, sort of like a river, like on the relevance and like however much she recurred, not like the same level that River is as a character, just like the same amount she appeared in the show, that sort of amount for Susan. and for Gallifrey.
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, the Doctor in the end he leaves Gallifrey, and the series ends on almost an overall series final note, with the Doctor departing his home planet and wondering what else is out there in the universe. Cut to credits. And that again, if hypothetically, if the show wanted to end on a high note, on almost a final note, they could do that. That could have been an ending point for Doctor Who. They could have gone off air for a few years.
To find Gallifrey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that could have been it. But no, in my perfect alternative reality, the show is at its peak still. It's made a lot of interest and views and money, so they make another season, and then we now get to that now with series 12. So this take on series 12 is completely different. It's a twist actually on the new era starting, because the first scene of the first this episode starts not with the Doctor, but with the companion. And again, just keep in mind, audience and Harry for this. Keep in mind that purge everything you saw with Doctor Who from the start of Series 11 in official canon. So pretend you've never seen Jodie Whittaker. Pretend you've never
Cool.
seen Yasmin Khan.
With
Yeah,
pleasure.
pretend you've never seen any of that, and this is your
Yeah.
first time seeing Doctor Who in this new incarnation. So, in my take on Series 12, we open with an Earth girl called Yasmin Khan, and she's a young police officer doing her patrol. And she is just doing her shift. She's waiting to finish up so she can head home for the evening. She's got plans, and then she gets a call saying, "Oh, I've got a report of some hooligans probably messing around in an abandoned building. Can you check it out, officer?" "Yes, sir." And she goes to check it out, and she ends up stumbling.
Why is your voice for everything always
Sorry, I
American,
don't.
by the way? For like for Peter Capaldi, you done American, and for a British police officer, you
Sorry,
go with
it
American.
wasn't intentional. I don't know why I'm trying to put on any kind of accent, but yeah, I'm just being weird. But yeah. So the point is, she goes to check out this abandoned building based off reports, and she ends up stumbling across this creepy looking alien, this humanoid alien. Maybe he's got some bug-like features. Maybe he's got a very grotesque alien feature. But the point is, he's clearly an alien.
Maybe he has teeth on his face.
No, it's not. It's not that guy. He's
Fuck's sake, I'm very sorry.
I
Sorry.
think.
Yeah, sorry. We're supposed to forget about it. I can't forget about him. He's stupid.
But yeah, so she sees it's an alien, and it's got someone imprisoned in this big chamber, and that person clearly seems to be in pain. So Yaz, doing her thing, being an officer of the law, she has to protect the innocent. So when the creature goes off to do something else, she sneaks in and tries to get the person out, and she sees the person is the Doctor. It's the 12th Doctor, and he's stuck in this chamber. He's clearly very wounded. He's looking very emaciated and drained, almost as if he has the life force of his body being drained from him. So she helps him escape, and they flee. And the alien, she hears him screaming like, "He got away!" And they get away. And through the shenanigans of the episode, because I envisioned this to be a two-parter, so through the course of this two-part episode opener for series 12, Yaz finds out about the Doctor. He gives her a rundown of, "Oh yeah, aliens are real. I'm a Time Lord, and the guy's after me. He was trying to harness my regeneration energy. He's trying to become immortal." And so they basically try and find a way to stop him, and they stop him in the end. But at the end of episode 2, the guy pulls out a laser gun, and he tries to shoot Yaz. "You did this! You did this! It's your fault!" He shoots Yaz, and the 12th Doctor steps in the way of the blast. And he ends up severely wounded. They return to the TARDIS, and Yaz is trying to do her thing. She's trying to help him. She's trying to call for backup, but the Doctor says, "It's okay. It's okay. I've got it's all been taken care of. Didn't expect to go out this way, but I'm glad you're okay." And I don't know what his last words would be. It'll be something a lot more poetic, I guess. But the point is, the Doctor dies. The 12th Doctor dies in the second episode of Series 12, saving the life of Yaz, his new companion. And he regenerates at the end of that episode, and he regenerates into Jodie Whittaker. Cut to episode 3. It's pretty much a
No.
again. This is very a unique take on the new starting of the new era because it's we start off with 2 episodes of Capaldi, and we've now jumped into a new Doctor, and
But the thing is, would you be able to market that like for a new season of Doctor Who? Would you want it to be a secret?
I think it would be difficult. But I like to think again. This is how much how deep I thought of it. I like to think the marketing team. I would have asked the marketing team put out a story that we're going to do a 3-part storyline that involves the Doctor swapping bodies with this other Time Lord, and that's going to lead to this character getting a spin-off. So the idea that when people would see Jodie Whittaker running around as the Doctor, they would think, "Oh, that's part of that leak. The Doctor's not a woman now; he's just swapped bodies with another Time Lady, and that character will become important, which is why she's being so highlighted on, and she'll get a spin-off about her adventures. Maybe it will be a new Romana or something." And that's how I would probably get around the marketing side of it. I don't know if that would work because again, it's hard to gauge audiences like that. But I did it because probably I'm committed to the idea that what way to change things up than start off a season with a Doctor, but then by the end of the early episodes, we've got a new Doctor in.
Yeah, I do like that a lot. I was thinking when you were saying about his final line, it'd be very funny and very meta if he was like, "I didn't expect to be going out this early in the season," and then he regenerates.
Maybe. So episode 3. It's pretty much a post regeneration episode. The Doctor, they don't. Again, I can't. I wouldn't envision it to be a big threat that they have to deal with, but primarily it's just the Doctor trying to recover from his regeneration. We'd likely get a bit more of Yaz's home life. We meet because she would take the Doctor to her home, the safest place she knows, and she'd recover. She'd pass off her family would be visiting. They'd say, and she'd say, "Oh, this is a friend of mine. She's just recovering after a bad night of drinking, so we're just gonna let her recover, please. Don't distract her." And yeah, we would basically find out about Yaz's home life and her family, some of the consequences and stuff she has to deal with in life or dramas. But the point is, we get to know her as a person, but also her getting to know the Doctor in this new incarnation, essentially. And at the end of the episode, the Doctor's got a new look. She's got the new TARDIS, well, the same TARDIS, but you can there could be a plot reason where it was damaged in the previous episode, likely that gives it a new rejuvenation look. But the point is, the Doctor's now set and ready to go off traveling, and she says, "Would you like to come with me? You've helped me a lot. I'm very grateful for that, and you've clearly shown your true bravery as a person. Would you like to go on an adventure?" And Yaz being Yaz, because she loves her job, she loves helping people, but even she can't deny the chance to go on an adventure in space and time. Who wouldn't? So she says yes, and they go off traveling, and that's the start of their story. Now, from there, again, I haven't got a big plot figured out because it would primarily just be we'd have some monsters of the week. But I think the big thing to take away would be that I would have the Doctor and Yaz clash with how they handle the threats. Because with this incarnation of the Doctor, I envision that the Doctor would sometimes struggle with dealing with the morality of certain threats, and especially when it comes to terms some forms of authority. Because Yaz is a person who's by the book, and she wants to help everyone by the law, but the Doctor sometimes has to think outside the box, and I think they would definitely have to clash in that regard. And I think that would make for some interesting interactions for a Doctor and a companion, considering one of them is a police officer. And it'd be a kind of meta considering they're traveling in a police box.
I mean, yeah, man. If it's just Jodie and Yaz, that sounds better already than what we got. And I think they never drew comparison between Yaz being a police officer and the TARDIS being a police box. I don't think. And if they did, I didn't know.
They never acknowledged that at all.
It's rubbish. Yeah, it's bizarre. So yeah, that would be a much better way of having that season.
Yeah. Now, near the midpoint of the season, after an adventure, the Doctor eventually realizes that Yaz feels guilty for essentially killing the Doctor's previous incarnation. So yeah, she figures out that you're feeling guilty that you were basically indirectly responsible for me dying and becoming this new incarnation. And the Doctor basically assures her that don't be, because it's not her fault. You're a good person who chose to help a stranger. You did the right thing. You were doing the right thing as a human being and as an officer of the law. And the Doctor, in turn, was willing to give up his life to save her because she deserved it. She deserved the chance to live. And yeah, so that's a nice little moment I envisioned where the Doctor and Yaz would come to accept what happened, and they would move forward with that in strength. And the season would end with 13 and Yaz meeting the 12th Doctor.
What? Oh, like similar to how the 11th Doctor called up um, Clara when Capaldi's season was starting.
Yeah, sort of. But we find out in the two-part final that the 12th Doctor, this 12th Doctor, this is from earlier in his timeline. So this is post the ending of Series 11, but before he met Yaz in the premiere of this season. And they basically have come into conflict with the alien race. I completely made this up. So if this is a real name somewhere else, I'm sorry, or whatever, I don't know. Or maybe this actually is the canon race in the show. Not sure. Didn't research it. But I made this name up. And the alien race, they're called the Carvox.
Carbox?
Yeah, Carvox.
Oh, Vox.
Yeah. And
Carbox is like a glove box.
okay. But so the race is called the Carvox, and we find out that they are basically this cult-like heretic race of aliens that are dead set on learning the secrets of immortality. And yeah, they essentially come into conflict with the Doctor and the two Doctors and Yaz, and they throughout the two-part final they're trying to they try to stop them. They're also trying to encourage them to give up on their crusade because it's fruitless. There's no point in immortality because it's not something that people should seek. It's something that can only bring pain, especially when you have nothing after life. After a while, the Doctor knows that the consequences of a long life, and yeah, essentially, that's the whole goal of the heretics. And they, in the end, they don't give it up. They are determined to learn immortality, and so in the end, the Doctor and the two Doctors decide to give them the secret, and they're once again hooked up to machines on the Carvox's mothership, and we think that oh no, they're going to steal the Doctor's regeneration energy, and it's going to make them immortal, and they're going to go out into the universe and destroy and conquer everything. But no, we find out in fact that when you get again, I don't know how this works logic wise in canon as well, but when you get two Time Lords together, the same Time Lord, and you basically harness a lot of regeneration energy into one place, it's going to be a bit of a problem. And essentially, the mothership and the leader of the Carvox, who is hooked up to this big machine that the regeneration energy is being poured into, it starts to overload, and essentially explode. So, in the end, the entire mothership is destroyed, all the Carvoxes are wiped out, and the Doctor and his companions are able to escape just in the nick of time. And at some random point in the episode, we see one lone heretic escape, or maybe a few. And these guys, it's not explained to the audience. It's not like it would have been done in Chibnall's era, but essentially, it's made quite clear based off your assumptions that these few that escaped, they will go on to become the few heretics we see in the premiere who capture the Doctor.
Yeah, I was going to say I wondered if the finale for this season was going to be that like the Doctor gets hooked up to this machine, but then Yaz saves him, but it's just the episode 1 again. Like it's the same thing that happens in episode 1. It's just now you see how it led up to it.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's how they beat the big bads in the end. That's how it ties into the final.
Timey-wimey.
And in the end, the season concludes with the 12th Doctor bidding his successor farewell, and he's aware that he's likely going to forget about this encounter because of their timeline shenanigans. The past Doctor will not remember these events, but his current incarnation will. Fixing the timelines.
And maybe Yaz can just say thank you for, saving her, but he won't know what that means.
You read my mind, mate, because
Oh, sorry, were you about to say that? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, as in my notes here, Yaz thanks the Doctor for helping her when she needed him. He is unaware of what she is referring to, but he accepts her gratitude kindly.
Yeah,
And in
yeah,
return, she promises to look out for him slash her going forward. And that is
nice.
my pitch for series 12. Now I've got a few more to go, but again, bit of a summary. What do you think of that one? That alternative take?
I like I wish I'm gonna like it because I really fucking hated the end of Jodie's first season because it was just shit, and I'm glad that yeah Ryan and Graham aren't like main characters. Are they going to be like referenced or like seen here and there, but they're not main characters, or are they just not in it?
I envision that they could probably be in it in maybe like one or two episodes. Ryan could maybe be a friend or somewhat implied boyfriend, or at the very least, maybe just a good acquaintance of hers from school, like she was in the like she was in the show, and he's
Yeah.
one of the friends that visits her during the 13th Doctor's regeneration episode when she's recovering at her home. And I think, yeah, so in that
Mm.
case, Graham would be like her next door neighbor or something. So yeah, they could feature in that episode, maybe in another episode, but I envisioned Yaz as being the single companion, primarily because I like the idea of it of course
Yeah.
being it being one companion, but also being if you're gonna have one focus on one companion, have it be the one that's most interesting. And as good as Graham was in the actual show, I like the idea of a police officer being the companion more, and I think you've got to take advantage of that if you're going to be doing a new take on the storyline.
Yeah. Definitely.
So we now get to series 13, and sort of similar with the early one, this does take in ideas and concepts that we have discussed before in a previous Doctor episode.
Mm.
Primarily the rogues, if you remember those.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, series 13 deals with the Doctor and Yaz facing off against the rogue Time Lords, the Time Lord assassins who dubbed themselves the Rogues. And for a bit brief summary, they're essentially Time Lords that worked as assassins for the Gallifrey during the Time War. They were picked-handed and basically created by Rassilon himself, and they lived for war. Their whole purpose was conflict, and we talked about them more in depth in another episode, which we'll leave a link in the description for. But the point is, they are the antagonists of this season. They are essentially the antagonists of Jodie Whittaker's era, really. So what happens here is that throughout the season, they find out that a band of assassins called the Rogues. They don't figure out it's Time Lord focused at first. They just know that there's this band of people going around causing trouble for the universe. And during one of the episodes in the season, they end up going to Earth, and they end up meeting the Doctor's brother, Ivan Braxall. And I don't believe I mentioned this in this episode yet, but I think I actually neglected I neglected talking about him in the Series 11 pitch. But again, he was referenced more in depth in a previous episode we did. Again, link in description. And yeah, I would make him canon in this case. He was on Gallifrey. He's part of the High Council under Romana. He loves his brother, but he's also like they're clearly a part of two different worlds in their profession and in how they do things. And essentially, in this episode,
Would you introduce him in this season, or would you have introduced him with Peter Capaldi?
in retrospective, he would have been introduced with Capaldi. They would have had a
Mm.
scene together. They would have united, and we would have gotten a gauge of what he's been up to and what he's doing and what he's likely going to do going forward. So he would have been introduced
Cool.
in Capaldi's Return to Gallifrey episode. Now, with this episode, this would be his like second appearance, and we find out in this episode. And for context here, he's essentially replacing the role that the fugitive Doctor had in the actual show. So in this episode, the Doctor is called to Earth, and he meets his brother Braxall, and he basically informs them about the Rogues. They go to his home, and I actually envision it to be almost Sherlock Holmes esque, where he's living in a very nice, almost Edwardian like home. They sit down and have tea and biscuits, and he compliments Yaz, and the Doctor's like, "Come on, bro, come on, please, just get to the point. What's going on? Because with you, something's always going on. So please just tell us what's happening." And Braxo will put the cards down. Look, this band of Time Lords, they've gone rogue, and this is why we find out that the reason why, because their master was exiled when Rassilon was exiled by Ratmana. So they in turn left to find him, and that's what their goal is. They want to find Rassilon, and that's going to be a problem for Gallifrey. And Gallifrey is in no condition to start our search to find them because it could be anywhere in the universe, and we are still trying to recover from what happened in the Time War. And there's only one person that the president trusts to with this mission to find them, and it's you. So, yeah, the Doctor finds out about them, about the rogues, but through his brother, and she basically decides from then on, okay, we know this is time related. We know it could be very dangerous if they were to keep being doing their thing, so we have to stop them. And and just to add this
Can
in
I
there,
can I
I would
say?
introduce Jack.
Sorry, you go on.
I was just going to say I would have Jack featured returning this in this season,
You
and he
would or
would be
wouldn't?
in. He would.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to think he would be in one episode or two, just to have a little fun adventure with them. And
Nice.
yeah, I think it would just be fun to have him back.
Yeah, cool. Well,
and
yeah, I love Jack. Can I just say
yeah,
so when you were saying just then, I had some really cool like ideas. Um, I think it would be cool like with like Rassilon and these assassins as if like this part of the like Gallifrey lore was like really politically driven, but by that I mean I don't mean like real life politics. I just mean like the politics of Gallifrey. So like you saying like it's really bad if these rogue Time Lords are still on the loose because like their goal maybe is to like I don't know if this is what you thought it would be, but it'd be like to build their own army and to stage a coup so that like they'd find Rassilon, they'd have this army, and then they would retake Gallifrey. But then there'd be like, and I was just thinking of like a cool name for it would be like the Gallifreyan Civil War, or like I was thinking of the Gallifreyan Time Civil War or Civil Time War. Civil Time War is actually pretty cool. Just like some sort of Gallifreyan Civil War.
yeah, that could be interesting. I from the get go, I envisioned it to be these are some of the most efficient bad guys in terms of killing. Well, not bad guys in terms of these are like the top killers when it comes to war on Gallifrey, and so these guys can do their job to a T. And the fact that they've gone rogue and they're going after the guy who essentially saw himself as a god because Rassilon was like hell bent on surviving no matter what, and he considered himself to be the future of Gallifrey because he was considering all he did for Gallifrey in history. He's a very powerful and very deadly figure, and considering what they ended up exiling him, he would likely want to seek revenge and retake what was his. So add in the fact that you've got this band of very powerful, very sometimes almost crazed and very dangerous people also seeking to find this very dangerous and influential man. I think again that's cause enough alone for Gallifrey to think, okay, we need to stop this, but what can we do? Okay, we have to get the person we know we can trust and the person we know who has had experience in dealing with threats like this and dangers like this. So that's the big reason why I chose to go down this path.
Mm.
I think it could lead to things.
Would just a quick question? Would this band of Time Lords be directly against the Doctor? And by that I mean like they're obviously annoyed that Rassilon was exiled and they're looking for him because that's his leader. Would they also then be definitely against the Doctor, or would they like would it be like a weird case with a villain in like that they're not at the beginning they're not against the Doctor and like the Doctor can try and meet them and then rather than them just instantly trying to kill her, they would just talk to her and be like, "We're like amicable, but if you get on our wrong side, then you'll be against us," sort of thing.
I do think that they would definitely be against the Doctor in the sense that they know her reputation, they know her involvement in stopping the war, because there would be some resentment on their part because in their eyes the Doctor was the one who stopped the war, who ended the war,
Hmm.
and that was their whole purpose. So
Okay.
yeah, they wouldn't treat her kindly. I think that Rassilon
Okay.
would try if the Doctor was to ever meet Rassilon, he would try and convince her to join her because considering the Doctor's actions as a war hero, and also considering what position he would have with Gallifrey's in its new position, I think having the Doctor on his side, willingly or unwillingly, would be a benefit. So that would probably bleed into the goal of his disciples as well. But yeah, that's I think that's actually something good to elaborate on for another day. But for now, funnily enough, Rassilon is actually not a big focus, despite what you may think, because
Okay.
what happens as this season goes on is that, again, and for a bit of more context here to flesh out this season, there would be, unrelated to the Rogues, there would be one episode where Yaz has a near life and death experience, and she decides to take some time away from the TARDIS and return home. And during this episode, it's a Doctor Light episode. The Doctor's not involved whatsoever. It's just Yaz. It seems like it's going to be a normal day doing her patrol as a police officer. She's moving up in the ranks because she's getting clearly good at her job. And what happens is that she ends up stopping an alien infestation taking over an apartment building with the aid of Unit. So we could see the return of Kate, Osgood, some other returning Unit characters like
Nice.
Malcolm from the Planet of the Dead.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. I love Malcolm. Bring back
Yeah,
Malcolm.
and yeah, this would be a cool episode just to see as she's going places and she's clearly learning from her life with the Doctor. But the reason why she would also leave briefly is because throughout this season, Yaz is beginning to struggle trusting the Doctor. Because despite really appreciating her as a friend by this point, she notes that the Doctor is keeping secrets. She notes that this incarnation is not telling her about a lot of stuff that happened with Gallifrey, with the Time War. I mean, she didn't even know she had a brother. So that's why she was very distrustful and unsure of Braxel when they first meet. But the Doctor's like, it's okay, I trust him. But Yaz, as far as she's aware, is like, I didn't even know you had a brother, let alone someone who's clearly connected to high places. And
Mm.
the fact that the Rogues are becoming a bigger threat now, and the Doctor now has to deal with them personally, in turn, Yaz also has to deal with them. And the fact that the Doctor continues to not tell her anything, that puts strain on their friendship. So much so that during this episode previously, she has a near life and death experience because the Doctor didn't give her the full picture. So she decides to take some time away, and at the end of this episode, this Doctor Light episode, she returns home and she sees the Doctor. She's waiting for her. They sit down at a park bench, maybe, or maybe they're on a balcony looking over the city, wherever she lives on Earth. And
Sheffield.
likely Sheffield, yeah. And they have a talk, and they basically say it boils down to the Doctor. Basically, let me read from here my notes again. She returns home-
Will they say, "Oh, I'm still quite antisocial," or whatever
No.
she says, socially awkward?
no,
Be like that.
no, the
No,
Doctor
okay.
would never say that. What she does is that she said 13 assures her that she will be more open and truthful going forward, especially when the situation calls for it, concerning what they are dealing with the Rogues. However, she also confesses that there is so much about her that she doesn't know, that she's sure Yaz will not know and likely will never know about her, because the truth of the matter is she's an ancient being that has lived for so many years. She's going to have secrets. She's going to have done a lot of things. Some things she's not entirely proud of. And I think this primarily falls into the idea that everyone has secrets, for good or for bad. And sometimes you need secrets to better the lives of people. And I think this would be an approach the Doctor would accept, that and push for that. Look, I trust you. I'm clearly seeing that my recent decisions have hurt you, so I'm going to try and do better. But please also understand, from my point of view, I can't tell you everything because there's so
There's so
much I've
much.
done. There's so much I will
Yeah.
do, and I don't want you to see those parts of me, especially the stuff that I know would upset you. And and in her response, Yaz agrees. She accepts that while it may almost be impossible for an ancient time traveling being to truly open up to a simple human, she does consider the Doctor a friend and wants to understand her because she cares. It's only human to want to care, and if they are going to be able to stop the Rogues, they need to be on the same page and trust each other. So, the series 13 final, the Doctor and Yaz confront the Rogues, and they confront them not on Gallifrey, but on the ruins of Khan.
Mhm.
Yeah, so remember the Sisterhood of Khan?
I do.
Well, yeah, the Doctor finds word on where they are. They travel to Khan, and they find out the entire planet has been in ruins. The entire planet is in ruins, and the Sisterhood have been massacred.
What? No. But they have all those shiny cups.
Yep, and they've all been massacred. It can be left open that maybe some of them survived, but in
Yeah.
this moment, in this episode, they've all been wiped out. And the Doctor is able to confront the rogues, and she finds out from the main leader of the team that they were hoping to find Rassilon here. However, after doing digging through the Sisterhood's forbidden journals and texts, they discovered something else, something much more valuable. They found the timeless child, and they revealed to
No.
the Doctor that it was a being from another universe, a being that
No.
was discovered on Gallifrey during the Dark Times.
Oh
So,
dear.
do you want to you want to say something, mate?
Yes. Please stop.
I know,
I thought we were going away from this.
I understand your concerns, but hold out on me because trust
Okay.
me, you will appreciate this
Okay.
one more better.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty much plucking from Chibnall here, which again I was surprised as myself, but hey, well, just trust me, I'll go with this. Um, sort of the same origin essentially. The ancient Time Lords, who I would not elaborate on greatly, they would just reveal that our ancestors, essentially our ancestors during the Dark Times discovered this child from a rift into another universe, and it could regenerate, and so they harnessed it. There's no connection between these ancient Time Lords and the Doctor, and to make it clear here, the Doctor herself is not the timeless child.
Okay.
But there was a person,
Well, that's good.
in history who the Time Lords called the Timeless Child, and this child was found by the Time Lords, was taken in, but was then experimented on, and allowed Gallifrey to become Time Lords themselves.
Was it
Eventually,
Tectoon? Tectoon. Tectoon. No, not Tectoon.
no,
Okay.
Tectoon. I've got again looking at my notes here. A lone Time Lord implied to be the other, experimented on the child, and eventually discovered the regeneration ability. Went on to harness it themselves to give it to the other Time Lords. And I have it also in my notes here that the other is unrelated to the Doctor, but he is depicted as being a mirror version of the Doctor in her actions of wanting to see more and explore what else is possible out there, but more twisted and crueler. So there's a bit of a parallel there in just how in their actions really. So yeah, the this revelation shakes the Doctor, and the rogues have now not only discovered this shocking revelation, but they've now decided, no, our purpose is greater now. It's not to find Rassilon. He's still out there. We'll find him one day, but this, a child with such power and such influence, that was essentially our creator. We have to find this child. We have to protect it, and it will ensure Gallifrey's future, and we will stop it from getting into the hands of those who harmed it. Like you, Doctor. We will not let you and your Time Lords find this child. We will find it. And that becomes their purpose now, to find the timeless child. And the Doctor, she and Yaz return to Gallifrey. And Yaz has a bit of a reunion with Braxel. She's a bit more trusting of him, and Ian turns like, "Oh, thank you." And the Doctor goes to Romana, and he informs the President of what she's discovered. And yeah, Romana's shocked. She's like, "We can't. We have to be special. Special. We have to be careful about this. We can't. We won't tell the people about this. But this is a very serious situation, Doctor. We need to right this wrong." And the Doctor agrees. She thinks we what our ancestors did was horrible, and we need to fix that. We can't let this stand. We can't let the rogues get this child. We don't know where it is. We could be anywhere out there in the universe. But it's my mission now to find this child and protect it no matter what. And that is it. The season ends on a cliffhanger with the Doctor and Yaz now making it their mission to find this lone child and protect it from the universe.
Nice. I like that timeless child much better than the one we got. But it's like a nice sort of message, like you say at the end, where it's like our ancestors were in the wrong. We are not them, and we can be better. Like that's just like a universal thing in general, which is usually good for Doctor Who to have like universal ideas.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, approaching like roughly the last one now. So series 14, and this is as before. This is essentially an alternative take on series 13, which is Flux, and this has got the subtitle here, "The Rogues Flux." So, in short summary, series 14 would essentially just be the Flux storyline, but again, it's just the Doctor, it's just Yaz, and basically the Flux happens. It's because it's revealed over the season that it's because of the Rogues. They set it in motion as a means to help them weed out the Timeless Child and also ensure the destruction of their enemies, i.e., the Time Lords and any other races that would likely be a threat to them. And the Doctor has to stop them. And because we're dealing with the Timeless Child arc, which was acknowledged came from another universe, this season would also delve into that, unlike the bloody show which didn't. And it would actually introduce the concept of parallel universes in a bit of a grander scale. So during this season, the Doctor actually ends up meeting alternative versions of himself. In this case, she meets the Fugitive Doctor, who is established in this season as a Doctor from another universe, who for her backstory here, I've envisioned that she was introduced, and she was a version of the Doctor who left Gallifrey at a later point in her timeline. She's a lot more cunning and tactical, and at times cruel and brutal, but she still retains a sense of morality and sympathy for the innocents. And yeah, that she's still at her heart the Doctor. She's just a bit more crueler.
I'm glad the Fugitive Doctor's in this because I really like Jo Martin's Doctor. It's a bit of a shame the circumstances about her because like she's a really great Doctor, but it's like if you acknowledge her as a good Doctor, you have to acknowledge the Timeless Child. It's like it's a bit of like a catch-22.
Yeah, but in this take on it, she's good and she's in a storyline that I like. I'd like to think
she's her own Doctor. Yeah. Well, that's what everyone wanted, isn't it? That's what when we heard about Flux, we're like, oh my god, parallel universes, and there's gonna be all these different Doctors, and that'd be really fun. Because I was like, oh yeah, get Richard E. Grant as the what was his Doctor called?
The Chakra.
Shang-Chi. Which one?
I think it was the Chakra Doctor.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, that Doctor, we can have some sort of Peter Cushing. What's his name? Is it Guy Henry? I think his name is who played Peter Cushing in Rogue One. He could come back and play Peter Cushing's Doctor Who.
That'd be cool.
That'd be funny.
But yeah,
get David Tennant back in again.
Maybe. But in terms of the main plot, so they would meet the Fugitive Doctor. We'd be given a bit of a rundown for her backstory, so we know where things are falling into place. And again, I don't know how big this would factor in, but I've also got here in the notes, this version of the Doctor also still travels with Susan. However, this version of Susan is now a male Time Lord in her fourth incarnation and going by the name Simon Foreman.
Nice.
So yeah, fun little play on the fact that, oh come on, if we change the Doctor's gender by this point, have a little fun with it and have it so that Susan is, this alternative take on Susan is now still with the Doctor and is actually a male now.
Yeah.
That'd be quite fun. And I've also got here in the notes that they also meet Carvanista, the big dog. And and this character, sort of similar to his actual counterpart in the show, he's an alien companion of the Doctor. However, he is a companion of another Doctor from another universe, where his version of the Doctor was actually a lot more crueler and selfish, and abandoned him to die so he could save himself. And again, looking at my notes here, it's implied to be a darker take on the 10th Doctor sacrificing Wilf
Oh
in the
yeah,
end of time.
yeah.
Yeah, so in this case, this was a companion. It's not specified here which doctor this companion was with, but all you need to know is that this companion doesn't trust the doctor because from his experience, you abandoned me. I don't trust you. Just like in the actual show where he took a similar approach, but we didn't actually care for it because it wasn't exactly made well for the rest of the story arc.
Mm.
But yeah, in the end, Carvanista, the Fugitive Doctor, and Simon team up with the Prime Doctor and Yaz to defeat the Flux and defeat the Rogues. In the end, they do. They save the universe. Most of the Rogues are killed except for one, and the last episode ends. Well, so for context here, again, it's a three-parter again. So in the second part, they defeat the Flux, and the Doctor seemingly gets caught in the blast. She seemingly gets killed, and the Yaz goes, "Doctor, no!" And it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. The last episode of the season, it opens with the Doctor falling. Or you could argue this might be almost a cool parallel to her original introduction in the show, where she was introduced falling through the sky. That didn't happen in my canon, but in this canon, in this moment, she falls into the ocean, and we discover that she's fallen onto a planet that is very similar to Earth, but it's not made clear. And it's at this seaside island almost. It's like a beach. It's almost like a beach that's part of an island. Think somewhere in Ireland maybe, or Scotland somewhere. But it's a very green place, and it's at a beach side, and it's very windy, very British weather, dreary. And yeah, she falls into the ocean, and there's a lone figure sees this and runs up to her, dives in and saves her from the water, and he takes her back to his little cottage not far away. And the Doctor's recovering. She's got a blanket wrapped around her to keep her warm, and she sees when becomes a bit more to her senses that the person who saved her was a young man. He's in his 20s, very very young and very handsome, but also very very plain. He doesn't really stand out in a crowd, and he asks her if she's all right, and she says, "Yeah, fine." And the episode actually progresses with them just catching up and talking. It's like, "What happened to you? How'd you fall off the sky? Why were you in the sky?" And she asks him about his life, and he says, "Oh, I I've lived here for 5 years. I moved here after I ran away from home." "Oh, why'd you run away?" "Difficult life, and I just want to get away from it. I just want to do something for myself." And it boils down to that he's started it fresh. He's moved here to make a life for himself, and he spends his days drawing artwork. He has a job on the side. He's just living his life in his own isolation that he appreciates. And he visits the local village. He's got some friends he's starting to become more acquainted with. So he's doing better for himself. And the Doctor is very moved by this. She appreciates the need for people to want to keep running, to keep moving forward with their lives, especially when they struggled. And the episode ends with the TARDIS coming by. It pinpoints her location and comes to collect her. And she approaches the TARDIS. She thanks the old girl for coming to help her. And then she turns back to the young man. And just for context here, earlier in the episode, when he was making them refreshments after he discovered her in the ocean, he accidentally burns his hand while making soup. And
It's fucking Davros. Sorry, wait, sorry. I was this whole time. I was like, who is this guy? Is it the Brigadier? I was like, who could it? At first, I was like, is it Luke? It's probably not Luke. Then he burns his hand. It's Davros because he has one mangled hand.
You are wrong on all accounts.
Damn.
So, yeah, so he's got a bandaged hand. He's still got his hand bandaged when the Doctor's preparing to leave. And before she leaves, she goes up to him and she thanks him for helping her, for taking care of her, and she offers him the chance to travel with her because she thinks, oh, maybe it could do you some good. Maybe seeing the universe would give you a chance to see that, life's not all depressing and such, because you had a difficult life, but there's so much wonder out there to explore, and I would love to give you that after all you did for me. And he's very moved, but he says in the end, no. While grateful for the chance, he turns the offer down as he is content with where he is now, and he's hopeful that he will be able to move forward regardless. And the Doctor accepts his wishes, and they part ways. As the TARDIS disappears, The boy looks on a bit longer at the spot where the TARDIS landed and disappeared. He then removes the bandage from his hand and looks at it, and his hand begins to glow. Soon his entire body is encased with golden energy, and then it's healed. And it's again not like Chibnall. It is not explained to the audience. It's not spoon fed to them, but based off what we see and what's been told, and based off his backstory
Ah,
too, it's revealed in this moment that this is the timeless child.
very
This is
cool.
where he is,
Very
and
cool.
yeah, and the Doctor didn't even know it. She didn't put two and two together in this moment because
Oh,
she it's the most least likely place she would have found the child, and
bittersweet ending.
yeah, and
I like that.
and in terms of if the Doctor would be able to sense the child, I'm sure there's like he probably has some form of a special fob watch maybe, or maybe some other form of time lord technology that's keeping him hidden. Hence why the
Or
Doctor
maybe
wouldn't be
because
able
he's
to
not
sense it.
a Time Lord, is he? The Timeless Child isn't a Time Lord because the Timeless
More
Child is from a different dimension.
likely, yeah, that makes more sense. But either way, the point is the Doctor wasn't able to sense the child, even though she did feel some form of a connection with him. But she chalked that up in the moment to this is just a good person, just doing the good,
Hmm.
doing a good thing out of the kindness of their heart. Anyone can relate to that on such a honest level. And but yeah, the Doctor leaves never finding out about this, and the child himself, this young man, he looks at the spot where the Doctor once was, and he thinks, he contemplates. He still holds resentment for what those people that took advantage of him and caused him such harm and suffering. But in this moment, he contemplates the possibility and the potential and hope that maybe not all Time Lords are cruel. And yeah, that's how I would end the Timeless Child arc, at least for now.
Yes.
Because this arc,
Yes.
because just to add here, this arc could be continued at some point in the future, whether it's with Jodie's incarnation still, or with another Doctor down the line. They could meet up again at some point. The Doctor could find out about the child, and that child could go on to become a companion. But in this moment, if we're talking about wrapping certain arcs up neat in a neat bow, this is how I would have introduced the child. This is how I would have ended it. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's essentially the wrap up for the Timeless Child arc here.
Very, very nice. Yep. Oh, what a shame. Like, it's a shame that, like, this is so good. Because it's like, why couldn't we have got this? Uh,
If
yeah,
only.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's a very nice retcon.
Thanks, mate. And literally the last one here, and I'll just skim through this one because there's not a lot to add. Is the 2022 specials, Jodie's like last bunch of episodes. The only difference here is that when it comes to for one thing, they would be better written. So I would like to think the Silurian episode and the Dalek episode might be a bit more
Sea Devils.
entertaining. Sorry, you're right, Sea Devils. But in terms of the actual
Yeah,
last,
they basically are Silurians, though, so yes, fair enough.
yeah. But essentially, with the last episode, I would have it where instead of the Master's still part of the story, but essentially it's the last remaining rogue that wasn't killed by the Flux. They are
Oh, yeah,
basically
nice.
seeking revenge, and so they team up with the Master to beat the Doctor, steal regeneration energy, sort of similar to how the episode goes itself. Yaz still gets help from Unit. Maybe they could introduce some classic companions again, or maybe they won't. But either way, the point is that it wraps up the last few strands of the arc with the rogues, and this last rogue is defeated and killed. The Master escapes. The Doctor still ends up getting wounded by the rogue who tries to shoot her, and and I've got it in my notes here again that Yaz tries to defend the Doctor in this moment, almost paralleling her introduction when the Doctor tried saving her,
Hmm. Yeah.
and but the situation ends up for whatever reason. I'm rambling at this point, but essentially the Doctor still ends up dying. She still ends up getting wounded, whether it's by the gunshot or maybe by the Master who came out of the corner and shot her with a tissue compression eliminator. The point is the Doctor still ends up getting severely wounded, and in the end she decides to part ways with Yaz here, and but they're still friends, and the Doctor appreciates everything she did for her as a friend and what they've been through. And Yaz informs her that, oh, just so you know, I had to leave the police force recently, but I got a new job. I now work for UNIT. So if you need me,
Nice.
I'll be close by. And you can always count on me, Doctor. You're my friend. And that's a nice way to end their story there. And in the end, Jodie leaves in the TARDIS. She goes onto that cliff face and she prepares to regenerate. And cut to black. And that, in the end, overall, no more additions. That is what I would have done with Doctor Who if I had been given the reins back in 2013, 2014, with starting with Series
Jesus
8.
Christ. 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I'd like to think that, based off your reaction here, I'd like to think that this execution of the story arcs and the characters would have been a bit more well received than what we ended.
Oh yeah, man. Like the Gallifrey stuff. And what. So I thought this before when you were talking when we got into Jodie's season, is what I did think her series was lacking was like familiarity with Doctor Who, but like with previous eras, because like they got some Daleks in occasionally, and then Jack was in one episode. But apart from that, there wasn't really anything about anything else that came before. But if like the main villains, even if they're new villains, but they're Time Lord villains, so it's like there's some sort of connectivity with Doctor Who lore, and I think if you'd have made this whole season with Jodie, it would have had more of that, and it would have felt more familiar, and therefore probably be more well received. But apart from like that element, the Gallifrey returning and Susan being in it more, and the Timeless Child being its own person and not the Doctor, I think, like I said before, it's a shame that none of this has actually happened, because like this stuff would have been like it it would have probably made Doctor Who like how popular we think the like Tennant era was, like being like really good stories and that, and yeah, it's just it. I'll try not to put a down on it, but it was the stuff you've said is really really cool, and like the ideas you've had are really like really cool and really like creative, and how do you put it, like really meaningful, like the ending with the Timeless Child is very like impactful and like subtle, but yeah, I like it.
Thanks, mate. Again, I've repeated that a lot, but it's true. It's nice to hear. I'm glad you like
That's
them so
okay.
much. And
Yeah, yeah, I mean it's better than what we got.
yeah, and yeah, and again, I don't ask this often because again, I guess I'd like to let the conversation stand for itself. But I'm curious if anyone in the audience is listening. Well, let me know what you think. What do you think of this pitch? Do you think this is better? I'd like to think it is, but hey, that's not for me to decide. What do you guys think? But yeah, at the end of the day, I really like this just because I like how it does feel a bit more connected in terms of making sense for a direction. And yeah, I mean, going forward from here, if what we get with I'd like to think in a better timeline, and even in the prime timeline here right now, if the 60th specials and if series 14 going forward, if they end up being really good and they redeem Doctor Who and we get a good era going forward, I like to think that this would slot quite nicely in with that. So we don't get an era and a half of disappointment. We get a good bunch of eras and a good. I don't know. I'm talking out of my head, out of my ears right now. But the point is, I'm really glad. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I'm glad you liked it because I really enjoyed writing it. And at the end of the day, this is what I would have preferred they do with Doctor Who because I love it so much. I really love these characters, and it's such a shame that a lot of the potential with these characters was never realized. And so again, we've talked about this before, but some of these characters and arcs they're likely never going to be resolved. Whether it's because of the actor's age, whether it's because of the storylines and how long it's been since they were last delved into, and what's happening with other storylines, so that's taken importance away from certain ones. So, well, again, at this point in in the prime timeline, we're likely never going to get any meaningful resolution for any of these other storylines unless certain things happen with the show going forward, if they even happen at all. But
Or Big Finish.
yeah, for if moment for an hour and a half, I guess, or however long this episode ends up being. I'm glad we were able to enjoy this cool what if.
Yeah, what could have been.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the episode for today, mate. So thanks for joining us, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it too.
I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Thanks, mate.